Hello and welcome to another episode of Millennial Economics. Today we are going to talk about how much money is enough. All right, so let's just really dig right in. One thing that I have heard a lot about, especially when browsing YouTube and browsing Instagram and listening to all the podcasts, really is just about the accumulation of wealth. And while these things are great, and I've learned a ton from these resources, one thing that I've really started to notice is there's a bit of a lack of content about why are we building the wealth, right? What is the end goal? The accumulation of wealth for some might be a game, and there is kind of a game element to it, right? There is a fun element about, getting our finances in order and seeing those accounts start to get larger. But the one thing that I really recently have found myself asking myself is, what is the purpose behind what I'm doing? What is the end? Or in other words, what this video is about, how much money is enough? When do we say we've made it? I think that that's important for us to establish because a lot of people go on in life pushing and pushing and pushing, and they do that until they die, and they never really have the opportunity to sit back and say, hey, I achieved this goal. Now I can do X, Y, Z because of all my hard work, right? I wanted to talk a little bit about my story. So I came from not a lot of financial knowledge, right? I didn't grow up in a wealthy family. I didn't grow up understanding what stocks were. I didn't understand what my 401k was when I got my first corporate job. So learning finance was not second nature to me, right? I really had to dig in, and I started learning about it because of pain that was in my life. My wife and I, we had our first kid, and we found ourselves in a lot of debt. And we found ourselves in a spot where we were just making ends meet. We were just paying those bills. We weren't accumulating anything. We weren't making progress. We were just kind of treading water. And eventually I woke up, and through a lot of frustration, I just kind of said, I'm done, and I'm kind of sick of it. And so I started reading books. I started listening to podcasts, and eventually got to the point where I'm now, where we were able to make it through the debt payoff phase. We were able to make it through the emergency fund phase, and we were able to start investing. And I started reading lots of books, and I started accumulating a lot of knowledge. But when you get to that point, right, you have to have a why behind what you do. If you're doing it just to do it, you're not going to there's no longevity to those actions, because being financially fit and investing and doing the right things is oftentimes not easy, right? There's a lot of things that are counterintuitive and don't come natural to us as humans. And sticking to that long term, there has to be a strong why behind what we do. So again, I came from a lot of debt. Not a lot of financial knowledge. I felt the pain of that. I felt the pain of not being able to take vacations and to, purchase my wife nice things, and to not be able to retire early. And, I just saw a life ahead of me that I just wasn't pleased with. And so I decided to change some things with my finance. So for me, money isn't just about accumulating things. I tell people this a lot. I was actually just talking to some family about this. If I had $10 million in my accounts, which I don't, but if I did, the first thing that I'm going to do is not go out and buy a Lamborghini or a Ferrari, even though I love cars. Ask anybody that knows me. That's not really my end goal. Yes, I want to enjoy my money with some frivolous things but in moderation. But to me, money equals freedom. Money equals freedom of what I do with my time, and what my family is able to do, and how I'm able to interact with them, right? So that's really my why, and I think that we have to establish that to get to the point where we can really understand when enough is enough, and we'll get into that here in a little bit. I think really goals are where we have to start. Everybody has different goals. Everybody has different desires, right? Maybe your desire is to buy that Lamborghini. Maybe your desire is to retire early and spend more time with your family. Maybe your desire is to able to quit your job that you don't like now to go take a pay cut to work a job that you really enjoy and really want to do. Maybe you want to become a pilot or a police officer or a firefighter or an artist, or you want to start a YouTube channel full time. And right now, because of your situation and your financial obligations, whether you're deeply in debt or whether you're not, and you're working toward, you're investing heavily, whether your obligations might not be allowing you to actually do the things and achieve the things that you want to do personally and professionally. right? So we all need to decide what our goals are. Maybe you're in a small 1-bedroom apartment right now, or like a studio like my first place was, and you want to eventually buy a house. These goals are what are going to drive us. So the first thing that we need to do to establish how much money is enough is understand what our why is and what our goals are. Before we move along, I'm starting to put out more videos here. I hope that you find them valuable. If you do, I'd really appreciate it if you hit the like button and also subscribe to the channel, because again, we have lots of new content that will be coming out very soon. I also want to give a quick plug to Acorns. I have personally used Acorns for, I want to say, 5+ years. It's one of the main ways that I invest my money. I think it's a fantastic option for newbie investors and seasoned investors. Acorns does a great job of keeping investing easy, whether you're just doing it for recurring investing, or you do one-time kind of investments into your account, or you use their roundup feature where it rounds up the nearest dollar for every transaction on the card that you attach to your account and invest that money. There's lots of great things. There's Roth IRAs, there's kids accounts, but I can't suggest or recommend Acorns enough. So if that is of interest to you and you'd like to try it out, there's a link down below in the description. If you click it, you get $5 free, and I get a little kickback from that as well. But moving on. So how do we calculate how much money is enough for what our goals are? I first want to start, I have been reading this book, and it's a whopper. But I've been reading this book, and I'm only about halfway through, but I stumbled upon just a little snippet that I wanted to share with you all. So I'll read that here. And by the way, this is Money Master the Game, 7 Simple Steps to Financial Freedom by Tony Robbins. I'll be willing to bet that once you find out the real price of your dreams, the number it would take for you to really get where you want to be is a lot less than you think. And always remember the ultimate truth. Life is not about money, it's about emotion. The real goal is to have the lifestyle you want, not the things. And I just thought that was really powerful, and that's kind of what inspired me to record this episode. It's not just about the money. In this personal finance community, and I'm sure, just based off of my channel size and my reach, that I am not the first YouTube video you're watching about personal finance. I'm not the first channel you're watching about personal finance. We do a really bad job in the personal finance community of emphasizing that it's not about the money. It's about what we can achieve with the money, right? It's about how the money can get us closer to our why and our goals. Okay, so I thought that was really powerful. And in this book, he really describes how to break it down into easy bite-sized pieces and easy steps to figure out how much money do I need to achieve my goals. And then that's usually a very doable number for you to achieve. So how do we calculate this? Well, because we've established our budget, if you've been listening to my podcast and going through my university series here at the beginning of the year, if you haven't gone through that series, I would highly suggest you to go to it. I believe it starts at episode 80, and we are, as of the recording of this video, as of tonight, we're on podcast part 4 or 5. I can't remember. I don't encourage you to do that, but if you have a budget established, you are going to know exactly how much money you bring in, and you're also going to know exactly how much your expenses are, right? So what we want to look at and think about are, what do we want our lifestyle to be if we didn't have to work at all, if we were living just off of the interest from our investments? And the interest from our investments, or maybe the returns that you're getting on rental property or money you're making from a business, whatever it is, how much money do we need to live the lifestyle that's good with us? Some people are hardcore minimalists and can live on hardly any money every month. Some people, like myself, I have a wife, I have 2 kids, I have a dog. I also want to enjoy some things, right? We don't live a lavish lifestyle, but I do want to enjoy some certain things. So, what I've done is taken just a list and broken that down into, all right, how much money is it going to take for me to live comfortably and to support the people that depend on my income, right? Once you get to that point, that monthly number of what you need, you want to multiply that by 12 to get the annual number that you actually need, okay? So we have our monthly number, multiply that by 12, get our annual number. That's how much money we need to bring in. And yes, it's pre-tax, and we're not going to get into, taxes and whatever. That's not the video. This is not the video for that. But now we have our annual number. What you want to do is we're going to follow something called the 4% rule, and I'll explain what that is in a bit. we want to take that annual number and multiply it by 25, okay? We want to multiply it by 25. If we're talking purely investments, and again, this is not income from a side hustle, this is not income from a business, this is not income from real estate or anything like that. If we're talking about just living off of the interest our investment is making, right? So maybe you have investments in the stock market. You multiply it by 25, and that's the amount that you need to have invested, okay? The reason why we get to that 25% number gets us back around to the 4% rule. Okay, so when we have this big lump sum, we can deduct 4% from that number every year to live off of, okay? And that 4% is going to be that annual number that you wanted to achieve, that you dictated to yourself that you can live off of every year comfortably, and that's what you want to allocate to your expenses, okay? So that 4% we're going to be able to deduct every year from that lump sum that we have invested. There was a study done a number of years ago, and they came up with this 5%, really, between 4 and 5%. I use 4 because it's a little bit safer. But they said if you deduct 4% from your investments, that money will last because of interest, right? It's building, and if you have it invested in the S&P 500, it'll build anywhere on average. It'll vary every year, but on average, 7 to 10% a year, we'll say. If you deduct that 4%, your money will last you until you die, okay? And I would really challenge you to do this. You know, I think that if you asked yourself, just without doing any of this math, how much money do I need in an investment account to live off of every year without having to put any additional money in? A lot of people would think a very high number, 4 million, 5 million, 20 million, $100 million, right? But when you break this math down, oftentimes it's a lot lower than you think, particularly if you don't have a lot of expenses and you can live off of a small number. So your number might be $600,000. Your number might be $700,000. And what's really great is, you know, we've done the math and we've broken this down. So now it's not an ethereal thing that we think we have to have all this money. It's an actual hard number that's more achievable than you might imagine. And when you have that number that's more achievable, you're going to drive harder to hit that number. Just to kind of wrap up, you know, what is your number? Do this math, right? Let me break it down for you one more time. You take your expenses, or what you want to live off of, okay? Take your expenses, maybe you have some fun money here, maybe you have a travel expense, whatever. Take that number, multiply it by 12 to get your annual number, okay? Your monthly expenses multiplied by 12, you get that annual number. Then you multiply that annual number by 25, all right? That is the number that you can deduct 4 to 5% off of each year without contributing anything extra, and live off of that. So to answer the question, how much money is enough? It's different for all of us. It's different for our desires. It's different for our goals that we want to achieve. But I think it's very important that you establish this, because you could end up 70, 80, 90, 100 years old, still pushing, still thinking that you don't have enough. And all of a sudden you look back on your life and you weren't able to enjoy much of it, much of your time or much of your money. So thank you so much for tuning into this episode, and we will talk very soon.